Hey, what's up, guys? Node Investor here. It's been another topsy-turvy, turbulent, fun, exciting, news-driven week in the crypto space. It's never a dull moment, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for being here today. I'm going to cover some interesting news items, some developments in the crypto space, some things that happened yesterday around Coinbase announcements, and then we will do a deep dive into the charts. I'll be talking Bitcoin, of course, but I'm also going to be talking about a few of the alts to keep an eye on here as they begin basing. Some of them are very strong, Ontology, EOS, but I'm also keeping an eye on a few other names, and I'll walk through those charts here. But let's get to it here. So first off, in the news, so George Soros, a very prominent former hedge fund manager, has a family office, runs $26 billion of investments, and he is now given approval to begin trading cryptocurrencies. So this is making the rounds. He had previously called Bitcoin and digital assets a bubble in January. And so the interesting thing here is, just the big money coming in. Now it's official. They're going to start trading cryptocurrencies. I personally believe a lot of these guys have already been into this space for some time now and have been capitalizing on it, but now it's becoming a little bit more public, and I think we'll continue to see some more prominent funds and family offices and these type of things entering the space as crypto continues to mature. There's certainly going to be more money coming from the Wall Street side of things into this space as it continues to mature. So George Soros, a lot of folks are not too happy about that. Some people are. Maybe it's manipulation. Maybe it's too big of a money. But at the end of the day, these type of funds will make money going long or short. And it just kind of goes to show you that this space is not going away. It's not dying. If anything, we will see here, it continues to mature. The infrastructure continues to be built. And yes, we are in a bear market, but it will end. We will bottom. And ultimately, there's going to be a lot more interest coming into this space here. So another one is the SEC initiates proceedings on the Bitcoin ETFs again. And so these continue to make the rounds. They've tried in the past. A couple of the big exchange traded fund companies, ProShares, for example, have been added again, and they are reconsidering it here. Now, this would be a big thing for those that don't necessarily want to open up an exchange on traditional crypto exchange like Binance or Bittrex or even Coinbase, and having a Bitcoin ETF would allow those from the more traditional side of stock investments to have access to this. So, with your typical brokerage accounts, right, a TD Ameritrade or Interactive Brokers or something like that. And the proposal is to have a long and a short ETF. So you can get exposure on the long side as well as the short side. And it will be based initially on some of these futures. So it's not like the ETF right now is going to go out and buy a ton of BTC to backfill. But certainly there are talks of that as well, and maintaining some sort of asset to backing. So the exchange traded funds just come in different varieties. And some of them will actually hold the asset, the underlying assets. Other ones won't, so they settle in cash. And so it just depends on which one ultimately gets approved. But if this happens in 2018, it would be huge news for the crypto community and just would further bolster the bullish case for investing in cryptocurrencies, investing in Bitcoin and trading. And so I think this is good news all around, but we'll see if this continues to gain any traction. There's been a lot of attempts at this here in the recent past. So, but it's at it again. Yesterday, there was a Coinbase announcement, and it turned out to be quite an interesting day. Once this started coming out to the forefront, we saw 0x have a crazy move here yesterday, and you can see here it went, there was a lot of speculation that, and I think falsely, that there was, that Coinbase, the CEO, was going to announce something on CNBC's Fast Money. But I mean, come on, guys. Nobody really thought they were going to go out here and say, "Oh, we're going to add 0x to our platform." But for whatever reason, this thing just really started to pump on that. And I got to say, it made for a pretty good trade. Once it broke out of this range here, it jumped on this thing here once it started to break out of range. And then later on, we start finding out that, it's pumping because of the Coinbase announcement. It was scheduled for 5 p.m. Eastern during the Fast Money talk. And it was a pretty good interview, actually, so go check that out. But, kind of going into that, it was one of those sell the rumors or sell the news, and actually started to sell off before the interview actually happened. So made for a good trade. If you bought at the tops, man, that was a crazy pump. And, of course, it was just a flash in the pan is all it was, but it certainly made for a nice little intraday and very quick trade. I mean, you can see from the breakout point to the very top, it was 35% in basically 2 or 3 hours. So it was just a very fast move. And of course, when that fizzled out, it was just a very fast move back to the downside. So 0x had that move, but they did announce a few things. So they announced, one, that they were going to be starting a Coinbase venture fund, which is kind of providing seed capital to cryptocurrency, blockchain-based startups. And they're going to be an incubator for some of that. So they're going to continue to fund that. There was also talk about the Coinbase cryptocurrency index. And, I'm not sure about this. We need something like this to go a little bit more mainstream. There's a couple of different variants out there already. Some people use CoinMarketCap's charts and all that. But the thing I don't like about Coinbase's index, they're calling it the Dow of cryptocurrency, and I would totally disagree. But, I mean, it only represents the 4 tokens that they have on their exchange, right? So you have Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, ETH, and Litecoin. And I'm not so sure that represents the cryptocurrency completely. And having Bitcoin Cash in there, it's a little bit redundant, to be honest. So they need to make some changes there, but it's good to see that there's that development. Things are moving in that direction. I think we'll start to see more of these type of indices coming around for the cryptocurrency space. And then they also announced that they were going to be supporting Bitcoin forks and for the custodial and some of the other stuff. All in all, though, I mean, the anticipation for the announcements was really big, and I think most of them kind of were just blah. I mean, they were okay, but it was not, I don't think, what a lot of the folks in the crypto space thought maybe they were going to be. So that's what it is. Here's the Bitcoin Forks announcement that they posted a blog on, so go check that out. And if you're new around here, check me out on Twitter at NodeInvestor. You can also find me at nodeinvestor.com. So let's get to the charts. So taking a look at Bitcoin. So yesterday, Bitcoin was in a very tight, very narrow range. When you look at the range that it was in here, it was just kind of back and forth, back and forth. Looking at the 4-hour charts, they were all closing within a very tight range. And then late yesterday, we finally saw the next move. It went down, which was not that big of a surprise because, I mean, that was just kind of the momentum, and odds favored that it was going to break to the downside. The pressure was continuing to point downward. You can see here on the 4-hour chart, very much still in a downtrend. This was that very tight action here. Just let the moving average catch up, and then we saw the next leg down. And here we are just pausing again in a little bit of a range. This is the 1-hour chart, and now the moving average is right there. So we're going to see where this goes next. Near term, the first resistance is going to be around that $6,700 mark, and then above that, back to that range that it was trying to break above yesterday, and just basically 6,900 is the range, a little bit below that, but that's going to be the levels to be watching on the upside. If you go to the 4-hour chart, that would get it well above that 10 EMA and would be positive in terms of changing the momentum. But on the daily chart, I mean, the moving average is still way up at around 7,100, so even a bounce into that could be just that, could be just a bounce again, as the overall trend is still very much downward and the pressure on the selling side continues. So you can see that's still very much in play. So from the longer term perspective, the daily charts, this still hasn't turned, right? So we see these brief relief rallies, and they make for some good trading, and a lot of the alts continue to set up here and look very well, and some of them are already bucking the trend and moving higher. But no doubt the downward pressure in Bitcoin is providing some headwinds that's keeping the market at bay all around. And so we need to see this turn first before things could really get going. On the downside, if this continues to break down, the levels that I continue to watch here, and I pointed out, are the lows from last week around that $6,400 mark, which looks like we're testing now. I personally don't think that's going to be much of a support level. And below that, the next area to watch is the 6K area, which was the lows in February. So around 5,900 to 6K is going to be the near-term support area to watch. So this little zone right around that 6K mark is what I'm going to be watching. Looking beyond that, if we continue to sell off, I've mentioned the big prior base that we had coming out of that September sell-off, and that's really the ultimate low, somewhere in there. So between 5,500 or so, it's going to really be the area that I'm watching. If we continue to see this sell-off and we have a sharp breakdown and things get oversold and washed out, that's really the zone that I'm going to be watching, because I continue to believe we're going to see this good low put in here in April, and then we'll have a counter trend rally that'll take us for at least a decent bounce. And so I'm looking at for that. We're close. If you go to the technicals on here, the RSI continues to hang out at these levels right above 30. So a sell-off, a very quick high volume sell-off, would certainly take it into these oversold levels. But no doubt, everything is still weak from a technical perspective. The indicators are not showing any signs of strength yet. If you go to the shorter term time frames, the same story, right? On the 4 hour, the trend is still very much down. We need to break that first. And the 1 hour, same thing. Looks like a little bit of a bull flag, bear pennant here, or not a bull flag, a bear flag pennant here. There's just kind of continuation from this downward. So for now, just got to watch BTC just because it has so much influence on the market. But there are some other charts that are setting up very nicely and continue to look strong. So let's go through those. So first on the list, ontology. And so I remember I mentioned this ascending triangle pattern that it was forming and just broke out. It was very nice, classic pattern here. You saw the series of higher lows really tightened up here just below the resistance point, and then we saw the breakout and decent volume started to show in. And since then, it's just been trending very nicely. But I must say, I'm starting to see a slight divergence. I know I'm always the guy sharing the bad news here, but this thing is just strong. It's trending here on this 1 hour chart, but I'm watching the RSI and it is starting to weaken out a little bit as this trend continues higher. And so just be a little cautious. I'm not one to chase these things, but no doubt it's one of the stronger names out there. Had a little shakeout yesterday on the BTC dip, but just held support and then went right back up. But again, the thing I'm watching is this RSI. It's starting to wane a little bit. So maybe we'll see a little bit of a pause here. But near term, if you go to the longer term charts here, the 4 hour chart just still very strong, way above the moving average trending. The daily chart looking really good. So all around, this is one of the stronger names, no doubt, and definitely bucking the trend here in this bear market. In spite of the BTC weakness, ontology continues to remain one of the stronger names. Next is Binance. So the BNB on the USD pair, this is continuing to be strong here, and it's hit this resistance point around that $14 mark, just above a couple of times, but it's still living above the moving average. It's still trending higher. And if you go to the 4 hour chart, this is setting up a pretty interesting pattern here. Could form into a little bit of a cup and handle, but it needs to break out here pretty soon. Otherwise, we'll see a retest of this support area, and you don't want it to get much deeper than that. Otherwise, this will begin to look more like a double top. But for now, I'm leaning bullish. I'm watching this pattern. Could set up for a nice little breakout. If it starts to move above that 1270, 1280 range, then we will likely be retesting that resistance point. And at that point, I expect it would break out if we continue to retest that. So keep an eye on Binance Coin versus BTC. Definitely has been strong and holding up very well. So if you look at BNB, BTC, just right near the all-time highs, pausing, very good action, looking like it wants to break out here. You can see this is the old high, has had that big run right back to that point. And so I would like to see this continue to pause here a little bit, let that RSI cool off some before breaking out. Would make for a much stronger rally, but no doubt one of the stronger names and trending strongly versus Bitcoin. Next is EOS. Just continues to look good as well. We've seen a series of higher lows since it found that bottom here a couple of weeks ago. And most recently had a nice pullback, constructive, right back to the moving averages, sat tight for a little bit, and then we saw a volume breakout here. If you look at the 1 hour charts, that was your breakout here, but it's now providing a little bit of a secondary entry, kind of pausing. We've seen this one do these little stair-step movements where it pulls right back to the prior highs, so you can see it here. Had that pullback right to the highs, breaking out, and now it's pulling back again. And so still looking pretty good, setting up well. And again, one of the stronger names out there right now. I think this one has some good momentum going in light of the overall market weakness. And so got to keep an eye on this one. They released their, I believe, version 3.0 of their software here just the other day. They announced that, and so this project continues to work on some developments. The next couple of months will be interesting for EOS, and watch here. The thing to note here on this chart is we're right below this resistance point, and so that's going to be the first test if this continues to march higher. At this point, it's about 15% higher from current pricing, so keep an eye out for that. It's had a pretty decent run already off the lows. It's already up 75%, and that's including this little bit of a pullback here. So I would just keep an eye on that one, but still marching higher, trending well, and one to keep an eye on here in the next couple of months. OMG has been in the news, partnerships, working on some good stuff here, just looking very nice, very strong, kind of pulling back right now, but just really just normal pullback. And if you look at the 4 hour chart, has been outperforming Bitcoin by a pretty good margin here in the last few days. It's up about 15% right now from this most recent low, and OMG USD is sitting right below a key resistance area, so that's the level I'm watching. If this thing breaks out above that, could have a pretty decent run. So the level to be watching on the USD pair is around that 940, 950 mark, and you can see it's kind of building a nice little base, putting in some good bottoming pattern here right below that point, and it's setting up well. So definitely one to keep an eye on here, especially if it can get above this resistance, then we may see a pretty decent leg up. Next level above that to watch would be around that 1060 $11 mark, in and around there. So OMG, still looking good. Next on the list is NCASH. Now this one could go either way, but what I'm watching here is this chart getting very narrow here. You can see the upper trend line is descending here, really starting to squeeze down on the pricing, and the bottom trend line is here, and this price is getting very narrow here. It's currently sitting right at the bottom support line there, so got to watch this one here. This one has an imminent breakout one way or the other here in the next day or two, so got to watch NCASH here, setting up for a decent move. And you can see in the past when this moves, it has some pretty quick moves, so I'm keeping an eye on this one. This one's high on my watch list right now, but like I said, this could go either way, and so it's definitely not something I'm going to preempt. But this is an interesting pattern. It's a symmetrical triangle, meaning it could go up or down, but watch for a trend break on the upside, and ideally you want to clear this near-term resistance here, and that would really confirm that it's moving higher out of this range. And finally, WAN. And this one represents a lot of the charts I'm seeing. They have this range that they're putting in. They've been very much range bound here. There's a few other names that are looking very similar, and on the upside they're just really testing overhead, and you can see them just bouncing back and forth between these ranges. And I think a lot of this is these alts want to get going, but the downward pressure in Bitcoin persists, and it's just one of those watching the market, waiting on BTC to see what it's going to do next. I think once Bitcoin turns the corner, we're going to see a lot of these start to break out, but there's a bunch of names that are looking like this, and this is one to watch here. It's a shorter history time frame on the chart. You can see the daily chart doesn't have very much to go, and so if it starts to move, it wouldn't take a whole lot to clear all the overhead resistance and quickly go to new highs. So definitely on my watch list. But like I said, a lot of these are basing. Substratum has a similar looking chart, Status, ELF, and you can see they're just finding these lows, but we got to see some upside confirmation and some volume start coming in if they break out. That's going to do it for today, guys. Appreciate you watching. If you're new here, please subscribe to the channel. Hit that like button, ladies and gentlemen. Until next time, take care, everyone.